welcome once again to The View from the Midwest. It's time for a St. Louis FC post-match edition. Going to try to keep this one quick because it's a little bit late. These West Coast games are kicking my ass even though it's on the weekend. Things did not start off very well for St. Louis FC as once again they gave up the opening goal. And for whatever reason, they just don't look very good right now. They got the win. Obviously, most people who are watching this watched the game or at least followed it on Twitter or what have you, on social media. You know what happened. If you're depending on me for the result, then something's wrong with you, probably. But ultimately, I don't know what's wrong with this team to start off with. I mean, they got the win, so how much can you complain? But the first half was just not very good. And I understand that they looked like a team that had played their third game in the course of a week, so that's going to affect you. Obviously, the stamina is not necessarily there. I'm not sure how much training they got in the preseason. I know that they had some preseason matches, and there's still some players who are kind of trying to integrate themselves into the squad. But this is year two. There are enough players on this team that should know what is being expected of them. The coaching staff is all back, as far as I know, maybe barring an assistant or something. But the coaching staff is still there. There are enough players to carry over from last season to where they should know what is expected of them. And again, I am not one to call for people's jobs. But there's just something wrong here. There's something wrong with this team just as a cohesive unit and from a fitness level. They just should not have the amount of players that look tired as they do. And it's becoming a bit of an issue because players are being substituted left and right, not necessarily even for performance issues, but because they're tired. They don't have anything left in the tank, and we're talking about in the 50th and 60th minute. Sometimes even in the first half, players don't look like they have anything left, and that should not be the case. I understand that this isn't the highest level of soccer, but you're still being paid, you're still a professional, and there are professionals in charge of making sure that you are at peak physical condition. And for whatever reason right now for St. Louis FC, in my opinion, and the opinion of others, because I know I'm not alone in this, it just doesn't look like they are in good fitness. That being said, the team does have that kind of mentality that we expect of a lot of American teams, because I know that soccer, aka football, whatever you want to call it, isn't necessarily an overtly American game. But St. Louis FC has that American mentality where you're never going to give up. You're always going to keep plugging. They got that equalizing goal, and when that happened, you tear that into halftime, and all of a sudden there were a lot of people I saw in the chat boards on the stream of the game that were like, let's just hold on to this, carry this the rest of the game, we'll be happy with a 1-1 draw. And that's kind of a sad state of affairs. Obviously, people are a little bit nervous. You lose a couple games right off the get-go. You don't look very strong, especially in that game against LA Galaxy 2. So people start wondering, well, what do we have here? Do we have anything that we have to look forward to, especially starting the season on such a long road trip? But St. Louis kept plugging. They got that equalizing goal. They played reasonably well. They seemed to kind of get better as the game went along. And that credit does have to go to the coaching staff because they made some good substitutions. Obviously, it was incredibly disappointing to have Thompson, the goalkeeper from Jamaica, get injured. Hopefully he's okay, but anytime a goalkeeper usually has to be taken off the field with some help, it doesn't bode well for the rest of the season. Luckily, I know that there were some people in the chat board, and I didn't necessarily know this about anybody, but there were some that were a little bit sour on Mark Pace. I thought he's done a pretty good job. He's a little hit or miss every now and then, but what goalkeeper isn't unless you're playing somebody who's playing for Barcelona or Real Madrid or what have you. But Mark Pace did a pretty good job, especially coming in off the bench, cold, not expecting to get any playing time. He made a couple key saves. Thompson with that huge penalty kick save, that really changed the course of the game, because right there you think if that penalty kick goes in and Thompson does not make the save, then all of a sudden the Orange County Blues are up 2-0 instead of St. Louis having an opportunity to get an equalizer. So there were a lot of things that kind of went St. Louis's way. There was some really odd officiating. Being an official myself, I kind of think I know what was going on in the official's head, because as an official, we sometimes take a cop-out because we just don't really want to give a red card unless we know 100% that was blatant, that deserves to be kicked out of the game. But there were two instances where there could have been red cards handed out to Orange County. They weren't, and unfortunately that could have had an impact on the game in terms of injuries, because Duty got hurt. I do believe he finished out the game. But there were some wild challenges going on in that game. And for two teams that never played against each other, there seemed to be, oddly enough, a lot of bad blood as the game went on. And perhaps that's back to the officiating, because they might not have done a good enough job to keep everything in check. And maybe they needed to give out a red card at some point to try to calm things down. It did not happen, but ultimately it didn't necessarily need to happen, because things didn't get too out of control. Towards the end of the game, St. Louis FC looked like they were going to be content to get that draw. And fortunately enough for us as fans, they weren't just content with that, because they started pushing forward. And Vince Cicerelli, a.k.a. Dino, for those of you who know what I'm talking about, who were also in that chat room as well on YouTube, that was the big thing going around. But he scored 2 goals at the end. The first one was a bit fortunate as a former goalkeeper. Well, actually, current goalkeeper myself. Obviously not at any kind of high level, but I still play. As a current goalkeeper, I will even begrudgingly say that that first Cicerelli goal should not have been scored. I don't know how he didn't get that one. He just kind of slowly laid down and tried to grab the ball, and it snuck underneath him. The second Cicerelli goal was much better, snuck it through the legs. There are people out there who don't know much about the goalkeeping position on Orange County's side that will probably say he should have saved that. Given the distance and everything and the shot behind it, that was just a fantastic finish by Cicerelli. 3 points for St. Louis FC. They're off the schneid, and now they can come home, get some home cooking, both literally and figuratively. Get the fans behind them, have that passion behind them, have that enthusiasm behind them, because I almost think that that has kind of hindered them. And I honestly wonder if that is kind of something that's holding St. Louis back. And this is an extremely far-reaching example, but sometimes you do have to wonder. St. Louis FC has such a great fan base. I mean, we're talking 3,500 to over 5,000 fans per game. There were only a handful of teams in the entire league that had a better attendance record for the entire season. So you get used to that kind of atmosphere. And then all of a sudden you go on these road games to where you're only in the stands with a couple hundred people, maybe 1,000 people. That can make the difference mentally, where all of a sudden you're just not into the game because you're used to being in a situation where the crowd is in the game. And regardless of whether you're the home team or the away team, and all of a sudden that is taken away from you, it can affect your mentality in terms of how much effort you put in there, despite the fact that you go in saying, yeah, I'm ready for this game, I'm pumped, I'm ready to go, and then you come out into an almost empty stadium or a college stadium where they got one set of stands over on the far side and there's a few scattering of people. That can change the way you play, and I do wonder if that affects St. Louis FC at all. But coming home now, they have those fans, they're going to have that great atmosphere. I hope to see you guys out there, because I know you'll all be there. That is the view from the Midwest. A big, big win for St. Louis FC. Obviously, Orange County not necessarily the top quality of opponents in the Western Conference, but at this point, St. Louis FC needed the 3 points. They would have settled for 1, but they needed the 3. They got it. They can come home now, focus on that home opener that's coming up pretty soon. And obviously, they've got plenty to look forward to when that happens as well. I hope to see you guys out there. That's coming up, big game. But before that, we've got some action as well. I'll see you the next time on the View from the Midwest post-match edition, one way or the other. Comment, rate, and subscribe. Keep the conversation going. But until the next time, I'll see you then.